So what is a buyer agency agreement? A buyer agency agreement is the contract in which the buyer legally hires the real estate agent to assist them on their next purchase, and that agent therefore has a fiduciary responsibility to represent them. And the buyer agency agreement also goes over compensation for what the buyers are going to be paying for their agent for the services rendered. So here's an example of what a buyer agency agreement looks like. Here's the agent's information, the buyer's information, and how long is a contract good for? Is the buyer employing this agent for 6 months, for 12 months? How long? Here's where the fees are basically broken down at. When a seller is being represented by a real estate agent, the buyer broker fee is X. When the seller is not being represented by a real estate broker, the fee is Y. The reason why I have these separate is because if we go look at for sale by owners, more than likely I'm going to have to do, in my opinion, their side of the work as well too. That's the reason where I have a separation between the two. And then I have a new construction fee for representing buyers within new construction transactions such as Ryan Homes or Miranda. Let's talk about this first line here, when the seller is being represented by a real estate broker, because that's going to be the vast majority of the transactions. My buyer broker fee is, say, 3%. As we start to tour places, I'm going to need to contact the listing agent and say, hey, before I tour your home, are you offering a co-brokerage fee, yes or no? Let's say the answer is yes, and they tell me it's 2%. Me and the buyer then go look at the place. If they like it and we wanted to pursue an offer, how the compensation works is that listing agent has agreed to pay me 2% of a finder's fee, basically called a buyer's agent commission, for procuring the sale and representing the buyers. It also means that my buyers would therefore have to bring an extra 1% to closing to fulfill that 3% buyer agent commission that they agreed to whenever they hired me. Now, if the buyer's closing costs go up by 1%, how is that negotiated into the sales agreement? So there are basically two lines in the seller concession line on the sales agreement. So we can ask the seller to say, hey, even though that the listing agent's paying us 2%, me as the buyer, my costs go up by 1%. So I now want you to pay the remaining 1% of my buyer broker fee that I have to pay. Or the second place you could put it is closing cost assistance, which is 1%. Now, this closing cost assistance line isn't necessarily designed to pay real estate agents. However, in my opinion, you're perfectly fine in putting the 1% in there, and here's why. If your closing costs go up by 1%, well, your closing costs are made up of your closing company's fees, your mortgage agent's fees, and real estate agent fees. Transfer tax, title insurance, all of that get wrapped up into your closing costs. So if your costs go up by 1%, yeah, this seller is subsidizing your mortgage expenses or your settlement expenses. They're not paying for your buyer broker fee. It's for the other closing costs. So the point I'm making is that whether you use top line 1% or bottom line 1%, it still goes towards your overall closing cost to bring them down by 1%. So that now that that's explained, that's how whenever you submit an offer, that's basically how all the commissions work. So again, I charge a buyer a fee for my services. Let's say it's 3%. We go tour a place. If that listing agent doesn't offer a buyer's agent commission, because they don't have to, it can be 0. Well, then my buyer would have to bring that money to closing. If the buyer's closing costs go up, well, then I'm going to negotiate that into my offer in some way, shape, or form.